As a exhibit specialist, I take care of all the more artistic endeavors in the exhibits department. I take care of artistic painting. I also do most of the faux finishes that we use of helping to construct and paint. This mural was done 4 or 5 years ago as part of a major renovation, major of our petroleum week. And it was the first mural I ever did. The thing about being a painter in a museum is that while at home I'm consider myself an artist, painting in a museum is more technical work. I am Andrew Miller. I'm a painter and exhibits specialist. Murals that are in the public eye for consumption on the sides of buildings and stuff, that's very different than the art that I do on a wall in the museum. Because public art on the wall of the side of the building is still very much like what I'm doing in here. It's for public consumption as art. But what I do in the museum is a vignette. I'm putting a background on a wall. There's a difference between being an artist at home in the studio and being a technician, an art technician at work. How what I do at work is the work of an art technician, where what I do is not really art at work, but it has possible artistic merit. And what I do at home also has possible artistic merit, but is very much art. I didn't ever really feel like an artist, and a lot of times I still don't. I mean, it's just a it's just a label. It's just a thing we call ourselves or other people call us, and it's just at the end of the day, it's all kind of silly. I don't dislike the word artist. I just don't know that it's necessary. I don't know that I would apply it to myself. I do a lot of abstractions, non-objective abstractions. They're paintings that have no content. Ideally, they look like nothing. Ideally, they are nothing. Ideally, they are colors on a field. And in a perfect world, people look at them and they don't say, "Oh, I see such and such." And that is usually when I think I've done a good job, is people will look at one of my paintings and don't say, "Oh, look, I see a weasel." I don't think you can be in this part of the world, the Texas Panhandle, and not have at least a casual appreciation of the landscape painting. Because there's nothing out here and everything out here. This is a land of a vast, endless expanse. My abstractions display emotions primarily. I mean, ideally they portray everything and nothing, and that's very pretentious. I tend to focus in on an emotion, and I tend to paint about an emotion. Be that whatever it is, and that's a lot of how I process emotions. I think the viewer needs to look at what I make, and they need to make their own, piece together their own ideas, make their own assumptions. I'm not here to tell anybody what to think. I'm just here to doodle on a paper. Painting is for me, and I'm happy to share them. I'm happy to show them off. I'm happy to sell them. But I'm not here to tell anybody what they are.
try to process things, meaning while they look abstract, they actually are based on representation and specific memories, which I kind of boil down into this pattern that can be understood and appreciated by everyone. I'm sure I probably would make more money if I made cowboy paintings, but it's not about that. Hello, welcome to my studio. My studio is also in my house, but this is where I do most of my artwork here in Canyon, Texas. My name is John Revette. I am an artist, professor at West Texas A&M University. I also have done murals. This mural is entitled Who We Are. It is site-specific to the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum for two ways. First of all, it uses interlocking circles, which are a universal global form, but I found it effective because it repeats throughout the entire museum. And I was also inspired around painting upstairs in the galleries entitled Early Washburn, which has an early morning palette, which really was what the painting was about to me. Was always interested in art, but it wasn't really till I had an exposure to a sculpture called The Emerald Ramp by Robert Smithson. And it was really kind of the catalyst when I decided I wanted to be an artist. I chose to be a painter, or actually I really didn't choose to be a painter. I think I just am a painter, and it's my way that I have found that I can express myself, and specifically with these geometric patterns, because the process is very meditative. Abstraction communicates more, meaning that a picture of something is just something, and while it can have a metaphorical meaning or allegorical meaning, I find abstraction more universal, and it's been a type of art that's been going through humanity for centuries and millennia. Oh no, I missed my line. Sometimes when people look at an abstract painting, they don't know how to perceive it, so it creates this formal language that you can address with them and look at the circles or look at the hexagons and now look at how the colors change. And so it does create an educational dialogue for them to kind of enter into the work. Yes, I do think it's a universal language. Sometimes the universal word is problematic for historical purposes. The wide open spaces of Texas are heavily influential on me. I think it's something that taught me to expand or see things from a different perspective. And one of the things that really has influenced me specifically in Texas is the idea of barbed wire and fencing and gridding. It's how we sort of control the open space, and then that kind of plays out into my own pattern field. So I'm trying to practice the less is more philosophy with this type of painting. To be an artist in Texas is some sort of to be an outlier sometimes. People don't understand being what an artist is. And you know, the number one question you get is, what do you really do, or how do you make your money? But it's not about that. You're an artist because you're an artist and you learn to make things. And so I think the advantage of being in Texas is you learn to kind of do it yourself and kind of stand your own ground and make it happen. The message I try to say is that we're all humans and we can connect through these forms and shapes. And so it's more of a reminder that sometimes when we get divisive or crossways with other humans, that we're actually all connected in some way. Sometimes what I regret about the art world is it tends to be very elitist and exclusionary. And I think my work ideally should be able to appeal to anyone because of the basics of aesthetics. They should be able to look at it. The patterns I'm using actually are based in this spiritual geometry that theoretically has translated through time that people are kind of programmed to enjoy. So the education level isn't really important to enjoying my work. People get very intimidated by art, and I think they have a hard time understanding it. And I think, you know, if I had to tell them one thing, it's okay not to understand it, and what do you get from this? My work and see something in it or wants to associate something to it, then that's fine with me. I really appreciate people putting time and thought and energy into my work. So however that manifests is up to them.
In this area, even now, there are very few women artists. And I was even told one time, you should never sign your whole name. Don't put Marsha, just put Clemens. They won't pay a woman as much as they will a man for art. I'm a realist. I see things that way, and I am who I am, and I don't try to be anybody else. What you see is what you get with me. I'm Marsha Clemens, and I'm a full-time professional oil painter. I used to want to be a fashion designer, but you know, I became a teacher because back when I got out of school, you were either a teacher or a nurse, secretary maybe, and you weren't really encouraged to step out like that. I got married and went to WT and started a family, but I always had time for my art. Wide open spaces are what I'm used to, and I think one of the most beautiful things to paint in our area is the sky. And I paint a lot of skyscapes, really. They're more sky than land, and clouds and beautiful sunsets and sunrises. I really am drawn to that. I also like to paint the animals of our area. I love to paint pets for people. A lot of people want a pet portrait, and I do that a lot. And it does give you a good feeling. When that pet's gone and you still have that little painting that you can look at every day, art can mean so much to people. It can be healing, it can be an emotional experience that you get every day by looking at it. And I think people should buy stuff that does that to them. They should buy the paintings that make them feel that way and bring out their emotions. So that's what I try to do with every painting. And everybody sees things differently. You know, it's like I may see something one way, but the viewer may see a total different story in that painting. And that's what's important, is what it means to them, not as much even as what it meant to me as a painter. I feel like all art makes a statement. It may just be that that is a beautiful bird, or I love that sky and those clouds. And I think that it doesn't have to say, you know, a message, a political message, or, you know, philosophical message. I think it just is whatever means something and is your feelings as an artist. I don't feel like I have to have a statement like that. I think you can make up a story about any painting. You know, I know artists that paint a story. And I have some paintings in here that probably do tell a story, and it's one I knew, but it's not the one you knew. So when you look at that painting, you may not see the same story as I do. I think just the beauty of it. I don't care if it's a beautiful landscape or a beautiful abstract. If it is pleasing to the eye and it draws you in, that is the purpose of art to me, is to make our world more beautiful. It is hard, especially for a woman. I credit Georgia O'Keeffe with that, because she was one of the first women that ever stepped out and became a professional artist in her lifetime and made the way for women to be an artist. We're not totally there. I mean, the glass ceiling's cracked, but I don't think we've broken through it in very many cases, really. But I do think it is getting easier to be a woman. A woman can be just as good an artist as a man and be paid the same. I think that part of the purpose of art might be to preserve our history and our legacy as a people. And we've been doing that for centuries. You know, down in the canyon, we've got some of those petroglyphs and stuff hidden away in the caves and under the ridges, and they're there, and those people were trying to preserve their life then, and I think we try to preserve our life now in the places that we go.
$50 and $60 years ago when I was little, the only way shops communicated, hired hands would change and go from shop to shop. They were kind of itinerant. Then one shop would be real busy and they'd hire a guy. He'd come and work for 6 months and move on. And so there was exchange of ideas when they came from another shop. Itinerant saddle makers anymore moving around. Our only communication started to develop on YouTube videos and all those type of things. I'm Richard Oliver. I'm their dad, and on most days. Hey, this is Oliver's Saddle Shop. We've been in business since 1917 when my grandfather started us. When they were babies, they were down here crawling around on the floor, and they've always had tools to play with and work with and everything. So
we certainly were raised down here and shown early forms of our artwork.
As a child, I knew I would, but then in my 20s, I had other ideas and kind of veered off for a while. But at the age of 30 is when I knew it was time for me to come back to work here and that it would be my career. Saddle making is a blend of function and art. So you've got multiple things coming into play. The function part is that it's useful for the working cowboy. So it has to give him a balanced ride, it has to fit the horse, and it has to be durable. The other part though, we decorate the leather like these exterior lines, the contours that are visually appealing. So there's some art that goes into that, and there's art that goes into your stitching. There's art that goes into the fine details.
It is mostly a functional art, more than just a decorative art. That the difference in our medium with leather is that it is not a correctable medium. Whereas oil paints and clay and pencil, there's some sort of eraser for all of that. Our leather, once it's done to the leather, it's in there. There's certain markings on leather, whether it be a brand or other marking, that you have to work around. And, because it is a natural product, you certainly have to learn how to work with it.
There's certain areas of the hide that produce more strength and more firmness, and then there's others that are a little bit weaker and porous. So, different areas for different parts.
They're more, and we usually cut it when it's soaking wet.
I've made saddles for 4 generations of families now because I've been around so long, and that's an honor to me that they've come back, the son, the grandson, and great-grandson. I'm phasing out because of my age, of course, but having the 2 boys here, they know what's going on with their generation and the younger crowd and what the younger cowboys are looking for now, and so it's very helpful to me that they're taking the reins and moving forward with the business. And my dad didn't force me to be in here. It was my choice. I wanted them both to learn in case they ever needed the craft and art to fall back on. But it was their decision to come back and be in the business. And so that's real gratifying. Yeah.
Welcome to the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum. The museum was founded in 1921 by a lady named Hattie Anderson, who was a professor at West Texas State Normal College. So she grabbed like-minded individuals and they formed the Panhandle Plains Historical Society. The society is still around today and owns all of the collection of the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum. The museum was a labor of love for Hattie and her friends who collected money, who collected bricks and artifacts all through the Great Depression to open the museum. We've grown to be the largest history museum in the state of Texas, with almost 3 million artifacts to our collection. We have everything we like to say from dinosaurs to conquistadors. We encompass a very large region. We are called the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum because it's all about the Panhandle Plains. So it's much more than the Texas Panhandle. We go all up into the plains. We talk about the Native American story, this clash of cultures that happened here, Route 66, and you have an incredible art collection.
And now we're in our Texas gallery. There was a tremendous shift in the way the landscape was being represented. Abstracted, it becomes more modern, but it's very specific to our region. This collection is unique in that it is such a large collection of this style. It very much focuses on specifically the Dallas 9, which were 9 artists that were represented in the Dallas Exposition of 1936. And we we also see a tremendous number of women represented in this collection, which is something that the PPHM collection is very well known for. Some great representations of that abstraction and that Texas regionalism are going to be represented with the works of people like Everett Spruce and Otis Dozier and William Lester. Now, when we look at these two paintings by William Lester, what I really think is so interesting about them is that we're transitioning away from what was a very traditional landscape that we were seeing in the academically trained painters of the Taos School. And that's an important period for her because that was when she was living and working in Canyon and teaching art at West Texas Normal College, which is now West Texas A&M University. During that time, O'Keeffe was going out into the canyon. She was walking around. She wrote a lot of letters, and she talks about how she is playing with what she's seeing here and trying to represent it in color and shape of what she's seeing in this location. It's important because as one of the best known artists of the 20th century, O'Keeffe was moving forward with modernism, and it was this period of time, walking around in the canyon, living in the city of Canyon, working at the college, that she really began that exploration of modernism that would inform the rest of her career.